But she covered it up, that's for sure. Why'd she put those hearts right there, huh? I miss you so much. I won't stop fighting, I promise. Kilmar wife beater Abrego. Why is she covering it up? They can't write, they can't speak English, so our law enforcement can't do a damn thing. You're free to go. No IDs, nothing. Good luck. Have a nice life.
This man is according to certified statements that we get, is a very violent person.
According to his own wife.
And they want this man to be brought back into our country where he can be free.
Kilmar Abrego, wife beater, human trafficker, MS-13 gangbanger Garcia was released temporarily, we think, maybe, to meet with Democratic fanboy senator as seen in this photo. This was posted by the El Salvadorian president called Nayib Bukele, originally posting this. And remember, the Democratic Party and Judge Zenas, who's been the judge in charge of this case, she has been in charge of this case and was freaked out. They want proof of life. She's been demanding updates every single day that we've been reading here, declaration after declaration, saying, is he alive? What are you doing to get him out? All these things. And Nayib says, okay, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, miraculously risen from the death camps and torture, now sipping margaritas with Senator Van Hollen in the tropical paradise of El Salvador. And Nayib said, after he was released, now that he's been confirmed healthy, he gets the honor of staying in El Salvador's custody. Firm handshakes between America and El Salvador. Now, the White House is pointing out that they actually care about Americans. They said, we are not the same. Trump meeting here with Patty Morin, who lost her daughter to an illegal violently, who attacked and eliminated her, versus the Democrats. And you'll notice that the Democrats did something. They either remove or finish the margaritas. Having a great time. And now the senator's leaning in. He says, hey, take a picture of us now, but get rid of these margaritas. We don't want everybody to see how hammered we are. Tell me about your fentanyl trafficking. I want to know what we can do to support your people and your human traffickers in our country. Strange photo, but they're doubling down on that. The White House obviously saying we are not the same. Trump cares about American citizens who are being attacked by these people that the Democrats are literally sitting down with. It's almost like he's going to pat him on the shoulder, maybe rub his face a little bit. Come here, Abrego. Come over here. Disgusting, folks. So that happened. Now, we also have Ted Cruz saying, you want to really find someone in your life who looks at you the way Democratic senators look at illegal, gangbanging, MS-13, wife-beaten, human trafficking gang members. Here's what Senator Van Hollen said. I said my main goal of the trip was to meet with Kilmar. Tonight I had that chance. I have called his wife, Jennifer, to pass along his message of love. I look forward to providing a full update on my return. We do have some updates on Kilmar, no doubt about that. Lots of stuff being reported on him about what is actually occurring, because we saw in that photograph these tattoos seen right here on the hand. And you might say, well, a lot of people have hand tats or whatever. That one looks like marijuana right there. That one looks like, I don't know, 1 or a 7, or maybe, I don't know. That one looks like a smiley face. Don't know really what that one is. Maybe if that one's that one. I don't know what they are. But what's interesting is that the wife covered them up. You see here in the photograph right there. So the person who brought this to our attention is a very good journalist you guys have probably never heard of. His name is Andy NGO. He's on X. Follow him at Mr. Andy NGO. He says, Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife, Jennifer Vasquez Sura, has strategically censored her partner's left hand in the photo. She uploaded on her TikTok to promote her GoFundMe. Oh, says, hey, Nayib, can you release the full resolution photos? One appears to be a marijuana leaf, a smile, and the number 13. So he says maybe that's the number 13 there, which I can't really tell. If you wrote it like that, I guess. I don't know. But she covered it up, that's for sure. Why'd she put those hearts right there, huh? I miss you so much. I won't stop fighting, I promise. Kilmar wife beater Abrego. Why is she covering it up? We know why, because she knows what they are. She doesn't want us to see them, but now we've seen them. So thank you, Nayib, for also showing that to us and getting us those photographs, clipping those for us to see. So I think there's something interesting going on there, obviously. And we also saw that Will Chamberlain posted this one. The New York Times was reporting this. They say Mr. Bukele in a social media post even crowed that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was miraculously risen from the death camps and torture, was now sipping margaritas. But here is what they report. According to a person familiar with the situation, Bukele aide placed the 2 glasses with cherries and salted rims on the table in front of Mr. Van Hollen and Mr. Abrego in their meeting in an attempt to stage the photo. I don't think so. I mean, that's clever if they did that. I think they were just being good hosts, though. They just said, oh, Senator, you came here from... They weren't trying to stage anything. They just were being gracious hosts. Oh, Senator, you're crying up a storm over here. You must have come all the way down from Maryland when you abandoned your constituents to come hang out with gangbangers. Here, have a couple of drinks. And they're like, oh, great. Slamming them back, slamming them back. Then they realized we shouldn't be doing this because they got got some sense, cleared the table, and then took the real photo. So I hope they enjoyed it while the rest of America was suffering from the onslaught of illegal immigration. They were drinking margaritas. Now, here's what he said about this. He looks a little bit to me still drunk, probably from last night. I don't know how many margaritas they had there in El Salvador, but he was partying with terrorists, MS-13 gangbangers. Who knows what they got into last night? This dude had the time of his life last night. He's like, we're in El Salvador, baby. Let's pupusa it up. More pupusas for you. Pupusas for everybody. Here's Senator Van Hollen.
Now I just want to take a moment. I hadn't planned to do this, but as I was landing on the airplane, I got a transcript of some questions President Trump was asked at the White House today about, I would call, Margarita Gate. I don't know if you guys have been following this, but President Bukele, after I met with Kilmar, did this tweet showing us at a table with these two glasses.
Slamming back booze.
So here's what happened. When I first sat down with Kilmar, we just had glasses of water on the table. I think maybe some coffee. And as we were talking, one of the government people came over and deposited two other glasses on the table with ice, and I don't know if it was salt or sugar around the top, but they look like margaritas. And if you look at the one they put in front of Kilmar, it actually had a little less liquid than the one in front of me, to try to make it look, I assume, like he drank out of it. Let me just be very clear. Neither of us touched the drinks that were in front of us. And if you want to play a little Sherlock Holmes, I'll tell you how you can know that. So if you look at the video or the picture I sent out from the beginning of our meeting, you'll see there are no glasses on the table.
That was after.
So you'll see in later videos they are on the table. Yeah. But they made a little mistake.
Anybody can do that.
Careful, right? If you sip out of one of those glasses, some of whatever it was, salt or sugar, would disappear. You would see a gap. There's no gap. Nobody drank any margaritas or sugar water or whatever it is. But this is a lesson into the lengths that President Bukele will do to deceive
what an evil
people
dictator
about what's going on. And it's also shows the lengths that the Trump administration and the president will go to, because when he was asked about a reporter about this, he just went along for the ride.
Well, because you were hanging out with a terrorist, hanging out there, sipping whatever, whether it was a margarita or water or coffee, it doesn't really matter, okay? The fact that he's going to zoom in so granularly on this, it wasn't a margarita. That's not the point, moron. Don't you understand that? You could have coffee, you could have a milkshake, you could have whatever you want. Having a drink of water is the same thing. It's funny if it's a margarita, and it's a troll, obviously. But if you're going to come out here and spend 2 minutes explaining that you got trolled and explain I didn't have a sip of a margarita, you look like a fool, even more than you already have. So point goes to Naib on that one. Pretty embarrassing that he would go down there and then have to explain his dinner party, cup of tea, or whatever was going on down there when he was hanging out with illegals. So that is where the Democrats are. They're explaining their margarita obsession, but we also are learning more. Now, Sherlock Holmes over there, Democratic Sherlock Holmes, should have been watching this show and reading the news, because he would have found other things about Kilmar and not had to piece together every granular of salt there on his mojito. But here's what they wrote. Patrick Leahy over for the Tennessee Star says they've now got body cam footage of that 2022 traffic stop of Kilmar wife beater Abrego when he was stopped in Tennessee by the Tennessee police and when they let him go. Remember, he was stopped with 7 people in his car and did not have a license. They tell us they got on Friday today images of Kilmar Abrego Garcia right there driving the car. They were just going down to Texas to get some barbecue down there and do some construction or something. But here's what they tell us. On Friday, they got an image of Kilmar when he was driving, caught by the Tennessee Highway Patrol. They have now confirmed the stop that occurred in 2022. Now, the image is captured from the passenger side of the vehicle, showing one of him and 7 passengers sitting next to him. He's looking at the officer as we saw in the photo. Now, within the image, Abrego's vehicle, which a source told the Star was a 2001 Chevrolet, he claimed was registered to his employer at a Maryland construction company, doesn't have many personal effects, though a bottle of water and a plastic bag are visible on the dashboard. THP confirmed the 2022 stop on Thursday and reported that the Biden-era FBI instructed officers on the scene. They call, hey, we got this van of illegals, literally truck full of illegals. Guy doesn't have a license. Hey, Christopher Ray, what should we do? Let him go. They did not confirm the date of the incident. Now, sources have told the Star that Abrego was driving without a valid license, shouldn't have been driving that car, and that the circumstances of the stop made THP suspect he was engaged in human trafficking. Curiously, the Star was told by multiple sources the stop occurred December 6, 2022. Just the News later reported the stop happened in November 22. The Daily Caller reported it happened on December 1, 2022. So we don't know. The image obtained by the Star appears to suggest that that at least one of the officer's body camera videos was not uploaded to a police database until January 9th, 2023, saying that this might indicate that they continue to investigate the stop, even after the Biden-era FBI instructed the agency to release Abrego Garcia and his associates. It could also indicate that the video from the incident was requested by the FBI. Oh, wonder what that's about. So is that why they're rounding up the wagons, circling the wagons around this dude because he's one of theirs? The Star obtained the image less than 1 day after it filed an opens record request. And is that why Boasberg is making these rulings? Or rather, Zenus, which oversees THP, seeking all dashboard and body camera videos. And they got the image, but they're seeking everything else. They want officers' logs, documentation of the stop. They haven't confirmed receipt of the request. He's a citizen of El Salvador. We know the backstory on him. Shout out to Tom Pappert for staying on this story and digging into that. So Bill Malugin over from Fox News also shared this, says DHS has provided Fox News a body cam image and the report from when Kilmar was pulled over in 2022. Per the report, he had 8 people with no luggage in the car with him. Claimed to be driving them from Texas to Maryland for construction. The report says Abrego Garcia was evasive during questioning, had an expired license. He was not arrested or charged with any crime. Carry on, go on your way, which is wild. I mean, you get pulled over for expired tags, they'll give you an enema. He was not arrested or charged with any crime in relation to the incident. You're free to go, but you're driving home after like 2 a.m. or something, right? You get stopped. You drink DHS says the report has yesterday's date due to redactions made of law enforcement and sensitive info, but this is an old document. Okay, so they updated it by redacting it, but it's actually old. So there's the photo, redacted that one out. Driving a 2001 Ford Chevrolet. 8 people in there. How do you get 8 people in a Ford Chevrolet? Are they in the back of the truck? Like, even if you got the extended cab, how are you getting 8 people in a Chevy? That's ridiculous, right? They got to be in the bed. So here they write from DHS. It's 417, but just because of the redactions, it's much older. They say, all right, this is a report. Synopsis. Abrego Garcia, is suspected of labor and human trafficking. Isn't that fun? On December 1st, 2022, the Combined Intelligence Unit received information that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was queried in the NCIC by the Tennessee Highway Patrol. DHS sources indicate that Abrego was identified through official law enforcement investigations as a member of the Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13. There it is again for the thickheads on the left. Abrego Garcia is suspected of human trafficking. No kidding. On December 1st, 2022, the suspect was observed speeding and unable to maintain its lane. Yeah, more traffic violations. Maybe drunk. Did they do a DUI? Unable to maintain your lane, kind of swerving in the lane. Maybe because he had 7 people in the car. Was subsequently pulled over by trooper redacted. Upon approach to the vehicle, encountering officer noted there were 8 other individuals in the vehicle with the subject who was identified at the driver. 8 other plus the driver, so 9. Subject stated he was driving 3 days ago on 11/27/2022 from Houston, Texas to Temple Hills, Maryland via St. Louis, Missouri to bring in people to perform construction work. There was no luggage in the vehicle, leading the encountering officer to suspect this was a human trafficking incident. Dun dun dun. All the passengers gave the same home address as the subject's home address. During the interview, the subject pretended to speak less English than he was capable of and attempted to put encountering officer off track by responding to questions with questions. When asked what relationship he had to the registered owner of the vehicle, whose car is this? He said the owner of the vehicle is my boss and that his work is construction. The encountering officer decided not to cite the subject for driving infractions because he goes, this dude's illegal, but gave him a warning citation for driving with an expired license anyways. The driver's license is MD limited term temporary. Encountering officer gathered names and other occupants in the vehicle, but could not even read their handwriting. Okay, of course. Can't write. Did not pursue further due to no citation being issued. Yeah, got it. What a ridiculous thing. As a result, he did not pass the names, dates of birth, or IDs of those individuals. No incident report was created, but the computer-aided dispatch number is this. They can't write, they can't speak English, so our law enforcement can't do a damn thing. You're free to go. No IDs, nothing. Good luck. Have a nice life. It's crazy, man. I'm a criminal defense attorney, right? And I represented a lot of people who never got any benefit like that. Okay, you're driving home and a cop stops you. You're like, oh, who are you? I can't tell you. Do you know why I pulled you over? I don't speak English. Oh, are you a citizen? No. Do you have any luggage? No. Totally suspicious person? Yes. Okay, well, you're free to go. Sorry for the inconvenience. Have a nice life. Nothing. I won't follow up on it or anything. Like, it's ridiculous, right? And you've been stopped by the police. Like, could you imagine getting this treatment? You have an expired tag. Cop's like, oh, I'd like to have a full cavity exam of your entire life. These guys just, yeah, hey, there's a McDonald's up there. Grab some food. You guys look hungry. Here, have some money from the government. So per Prince George, it's sick. On 10/10, the IJ issued a written decision granting withholding of removal. And look, that's the immigration judge. So per the Prince George's County police gang unit, Abrego Garcia was validated as a member of Mara Salva Truca. Subject was identified as a member of the gang as Chequeo from the Western Clique, a transnational criminal street gang. This information was provided by a trusted, tested source, they call tested, not trusted, who has provided truthful, accurate information in the past. See Prince George S. County Police Department and the gang sheet. That's their hero. So here's some more saying, according to the EARM case comments dated October 26, someone wants to move to Houston, Texas to be closer to his family, his parents. He has an HVAC employee, he's been living in Maryland for 3 years, has 3 children. Subject was withholding, no asylum or CAT, not a definite decision, but is thinking about wanting to move next year. There he is, 1995, El Salvador, MS-13, gangbanger, stopped for human trafficking, obviously that's what that was, by Bill Malugin, giving us the details. So all of that happened, and now even more, they're confirming this in other locations. Andy NGO posted this. He says the BBC Verify looks into the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case, and here's what they were writing about, saying, even confirming, the judge who presided over his case in 2019 said that based on confidential information, they write, there was sufficient evidence to support he was in a gang, and that was upheld by another judge. So he remained in custody. Even the BBC's talking about it. They say that his fear was based on well-founded fear of prosecution from the Barrio 18, which was the main rival gang of MS-13, and that he was being extorted by them. He also had orders of protections filed against him and more, right? The actual truth about this is slowly starting to get out, and we saw this even over from CNN, clip over via Gunther Eagleman on X, saying that they're reporting on some of this too at CNN. Here's what that sounded like.
To David Culver, who has speaking with sources close to President Bukele in El Salvador for new details tonight on Abrego Garcia. And David, you were first to report right here on Out Front that El Salvador says it has additional evidence about Abrego Garcia. Have officials provided any new details to back this up?
Well, this is something I've been pushing on, Kate. And discussion that you were just having just now, I mean, you bring up a really good point, and that is there is precedence here for sending certain people back. El Salvador has had people come in to say, no, we don't want these individuals, and to send them back to the U.S. What's different here, and this is coming from a source very close to President Bukele, is that this individual is from El Salvador, Abrego Garcia, who we're talking about, and they do say that they have evidence against him. Now, last week, as we reported here, they wouldn't give specifics, and they wouldn't provide me any proof. When I pressed a little bit more today with this source just a few hours ago, he tells me that it's twofold. One, prior criminal records, not giving me specifics on that, but suggesting that it's part of the criminal records that they have a meticulous file on in El Salvador. Amazing. And these go back decades. And the other part of that is his allegation that there are gang tattoos that Abrego Garcia has that have been covered up.
Amazing. Thank you, CNN, for reporting that. They're having a hard time. You can see probably a little tension in her face, like, oh crap, our hero. Even El Salvador knows this guy is a gangbanger. Now, meanwhile, the Democrat gangbang lovers who like wife-beating illegal aliens who traffic humans through our states are ignoring Patty Morin, and she was disappointed about this. Here's a little bit of what she had to say.
Or anger that these crimes were being committed against these women and children. And now I have a senator who's in El Salvador who is loudly advocating for another immigrant who's in the country illegally, has broken federal law by doing that, has beaten his wife, violence, has broken state law by doing that, and yet his actions are he's advocating for this man. And he's saying, well, he's a dad. He's been a good guy. He's been here. There are a lot of fathers that are in jail. The point is, they keep saying, rule of law. But by him going down there, he's advocating for this person that has actually broken the law that he claims to be upholding by advocating for someone who has broken federal law and state law. And his silence towards my daughter and towards Kaylee shows that he has where his values are, that he would rather value the criminal than the victim. And I don't want my taxpayer money to go to that. I don't want my taxpayer money to pay for a senator who is willing to advocate for someone who has knowingly committed crimes and not advocate for my daughter who's a victim of a crime, a violent and brutal one.
And going down and having margaritas with MS-13 gang members, not appropriate for a senator or anybody. Now, Trump was out today and was going through a process whereby he was going to read a little litany and provide some details on who Kilmar is, and the gangbang lovers over at MSNBC cut him off.
In 2019, Garcia was issued a deportation order. 2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse.
We've been watching President Donald Trump there swearing in the new administrator of the CMS, the Center.
She doesn't want to hear it because the truth hurts. Doesn't it hurt? Oh no, our lover boy is getting exposed here. Well, here's what Trump actually said. Here's a little bit more of that from the Oval Office today.
There aren't enough of them. We got to get some more of them. But no, I appreciate that question. No, look, he's a fake. I know him. I know them all. They're all fake, and they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad. If you would go into the room, you might, if you would, Caroline, maybe go into the room and see if you can find that little slip. I wrote some things down. I don't know why you'd want to keep him, but we got a little biography of him. Not a very innocent guy.
In the spirit of Easter Sunday and
while we're on the subject, right?
Yes, of course.
So you're talking about Abrego Garcia. Is that the one?
Yeah. Yep, that's the one.
Is an illegal alien MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist. This comes out of the State Department and very legitimate sources. I mean, I assume I'm just giving you what they handed to me, but this was supposed to be certified stuff. In 2019, Garcia was issued a deportation order. 2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse than Tren de Aragua, and maybe worse. They kill people with knives because it's more painful. Very famous for the knifing and killing of 2 young 16-year-old girls walking to school one day, and they sliced them up into little pieces and killed them. That's MS-13. And 2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13. When Garcia was originally arrested, he was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money pouring out and an MS-13 gang symbol that he was driving with 2 other known violent MS-13 gang members, 2 of the most violent members that we know of in the MS-13 gang of thugs. In 2022, Garcia was stopped by the Tennessee Highway Patrol and was found to be transporting 7 people from Texas to Maryland, and he had no driver's license. He was driving violently. In 2020 and 2021, Garcia's wife filed for a protective order from him and said he was violent and abusive and really scary, including allegations that he punched and scratched her on the eye, left her bleeding after throwing her laptop on the floor at her, ripped her shirt, and ripped off her shorts. He then grabbed her arm, leaving very severe marks. Garcia's wife also wrote in court, "At this point, I am afraid to be close to him. I just don't want to be close. I have multiple photos and videos how violent he can be and all of the bruises that he's left on me." She just couldn't get anywhere near him. This is the man that the Democrats are wanting us to fly back from El Salvador to be a happily ensconced member of the USA family.
Not going to happen.
Isn't it a shame?
It is.
And by the way, I've been hit pretty hard by fake shows, fake news, MSDNC in particular, where they talk about how evil I am, that this man would be thrown out of our country. This man is according to certified statements that we get, is a very violent person.
According to his own wife.
And they want this man to be brought back into our country where he can be free, happily. They call him the Maryland man. He's a Maryland father.
He's a wife beater.
He's a violent person. Who they don't talk about is that wonderful angel mom who lost her daughter, who had 5 beautiful children, and she was killed violently. And, she spoke, and she spoke unbelievably. I saw it, and the fake news didn't pick it up. She spoke. She was in tears. She's devastated. Her life is, essentially, she's told me her life is like over. But it was like, I think no stories. Isn't that true? No stories. 0 stories. It was the most emotional thing. Everybody that watched it, they couldn't believe it. The fake news refused to put it up. So it's very sad. And yet they talk about this guy like he's an angel. See the angel up there? They think he's like that.
They do
like
think that.
Do you encourage up? It has no impact the way she no impact. It's just like, unbalanced, would you do this?
All right, so that's the president, and going through that nice list, explaining exactly who Kilmar is. We know who he is. The media hasn't been paying much attention to that. So they brought his wife out here, and the wife was asked this question, clipped over via Western Lensman on X, says, Abrego's wife gets asked a question and freezes in fear. Hey, Jennifer, why'd you file those orders of protection against your husband?
And I know this is a sensitive question, but I have to ask it. You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
My husband is alive. That's all I can say.
Okay. And I'm not going to push on that, apparently. But
yeah, what are you going to say? And it's hard to even come down on her because her husband already has done that enough for everybody. So you don't need to double down on the pain that victim of domestic violence is suffering. And maybe she's under some serious pressures here from MS-13, the gang that her husband's in, to avoid talking about that stuff. This was what C-SPAN had for us. Stephen Miller came out, says, I can't believe this garbage is happening. Shout out to Stephen Miller for continuing to lead the charge on correcting the record here.
There was a conversation with Abrego Garcia. What's your response?
I'm almost at a loss for words for how outrageous it is. Here's an individual, the man who has been deported to his home country of El Salvador, who has been repeatedly documented by multiple federal and state authorities to be a member of MS-13, one of the most violent and ruthless criminal organizations on planet Earth, which is now a designated foreign terrorist organization, and an individual who has been incredibly implicated in human smuggling and human trafficking, an individual who is a documented woman beater, somebody who has viciously assaulted a woman in ways that shock the human conscience.
Ripped her clothes
that is who
off.
The Democrat Party is going to provide aid, solace, and comfort to, not to Senator Van Hollen's own constituents, like the Morin family. Rachel Morin was viciously beaten, brutally raped, and murdered, and her mother never even got a phone call from Senator Van Hollen.
No.
Or Kayla Hamilton, a young girl who was attacked in a public restaurant, raped in the bathroom, and beaten to death and murdered by an illegal alien that Joe Biden set free into the country. None of those people elicit human sympathy from Senator Van Hollen. How broken is that man's heart? How broken is his conscience that he doesn't have even an ounce of empathy or time or concern to share with those families? Or how many of his citizen constituents have been killed by the fentanyl that Joe Biden allowed into this country, by the cartels that made a fortune off of human trafficking and smuggling into this country, or the children in his state that cannot even get a good education or good health care because of the mass migration that has occurred into his state? None of that concerns him in the least. No, his heart is reserved for an illegal alien who's a member of a foreign terrorist organization. I'm beyond appalled.
Absolutely correct, Stephen, and looking good while you're saying that. Nice suit there. But as is, I think, hopefully becoming more and more clear, this is who the Democrats love. This is who they want to fight for. This is their constituency. What else do they have to offer anybody else in America other than just continuing the grift that has gotten them to the position of power that they enjoy at the moment? They want to continue that on, and so if the illegals helped get them to this position of power, of course, that's who they'll continue to support. Here was Tom Homan on with CNN.
Designated a terrorist. The withholding orders is set aside. And we got to remember, the withholding order was issued years ago. Things have changed. El Salvador is one of the safest countries in the region because of the steps President Bukele take. You know, the gangs are no longer operating on the streets of El Salvador. That's why he built that prison. So I don't think the gang danger that they once thought was there is even there anymore. So the situation has changed. It's much like temporary protected status, the TPS. That's only temporary. When the conditions in the country have changed, TPS can be ended and they can be removed to the country.
But why not make that argument in court? If you think that you can make the argument that he is fine to go back to El Salvador, why not just make that argument and try to terminate that order that said that the one place he couldn't go to was the one place that he was sent to?
Look, again, I'm not litigating this case to the DOJ. I think DOJ is continuing to litigate the case, but I think we're in a good stance. I think we're in a good place. Again, I'm not an attorney. I can just speak to my experience as a guy who enforces immigration law, but I think that DOJ has a strong case, and I think we're standing by what we did was the correct thing to do.
It was the correct thing to do, and there's no additional process needed. These are immigration cases. They're not Article 3 cases. These are not people who are entitled to all the same protections as citizens, because they're not citizens. And this is not new, okay? This has been the situation and the division of power forever, but now they're trying to smuggle in these illegal claims into the Article 3 courts and commingle this in everybody's brains. So thank you for explaining to anybody who you're talking to that Trump didn't violate an Article 3 judge at all. He, in Article 2 land, issued a proclamation that properly, with due process, identified terrorists and marked them for removal. The due process in labeling that person had already been completed. Thank you for sharing that with everybody you've ever met.